want to talk to you guys about today is the fact that you are all startups, even if you don't think about it or recognize yourself as such. First, I want to thank Don and Ira for inviting me here to talk. I have to say, at first when they invited me, I thought, okay, this is a little weird. I'm not a designer, right? I've had the opportunity to work at companies that are very much in touch with design. I worked at Adobe for 8 years working on Flash, a little bit on Photoshop, on Dreamweaver. I'm sorry if you guys had bad experiences with any of these. And I worked on tools targeting designers, right? Targeting designers from all walks of life, from product, graphics, web, UX, a little bit of everything. When I left Adobe and I came here, I got involved in the startup scene here. I started 2 startups, both of which failed, as these things often do. And most recently, I work at Wix. Do you guys know Wix? Are you familiar with Wix? Okay, looks like everyone is. That's great. So Ira, talked about what my role is. But we have this funny thing in software where we have architects. And the idea behind an architect is you have to design software and imagine how other people are going to use it. So given all these things, yes, I'm involved in design, but it's not entirely clear what I was going to talk to you guys about. The only fun tidbit I have about my life and design is that I grew up in one of these. I grew up in a geodesic dome inspired by Buckminster Fuller, a very influential architect that my parents adored. And so we grew up in this kind of model futuristic house. And we'd go and look at Herman Miller, which was very close to where I grew up. So I have some experience in design, but it's not a clear, when I was thinking about what I was going to talk to you guys about, it wasn't exactly clear. But so what I am going to talk to you guys about is a couple big pieces here. And the first that I touched on is we're going to talk about how people build startups. We're in an environment now where there are so many startups. Everyone around you is in a startup. You can't throw something and not hit 4 guys talking about a startup in Tel Aviv. You can't. We're going to talk about trends towards mobile, and we're going to talk about your web presence, your brand, how you present yourself to the rest of the world. And when I think about startups, and I think about you guys, I don't see a difference between the people working in startups and you guys. There's really no difference. What is a startup? A startup is a group of people coming together, or even a person coming together with a single idea and saying, I want to build a business around this. I have something that I'm very passionate about. I see a place in the market where there's an opportunity. But I have some idea and I want to build a business around it. I'm taking a huge risk. I might put my entire savings behind it. I might ask other people for money, friends, family. I might go to investors in the case of startups. But you go and you take a risk and you try something. And everybody in here, either industrial design, product, there's interior design as well. I hope I got everybody. You're all, if you're going to start a business, if you're going to become entrepreneurs, you are yourself a startup. And there is no difference between you guys and a startup. You happen to be surrounded by startups, but you should all start thinking of yourselves as a startup. And when I say that we are surrounded by startups, I'm not kidding. In Tel Aviv alone, there are over 1,000 startups. And these are just startups. These are just the companies that people know about. There's probably more. And each of these startups have anywhere between, 1 guy sitting in a cafe all day, and like Wix, which just went public, so we're no longer technically a startup. We have 600 employees at this point. And there's so much money in this industry. There's insane amounts of money. There's staggering amounts of money, so big that it's hard to wrap your head around. In Tel Aviv alone, there are over $3 billion invested in the startup industry here. This money comes from venture capital firms. Their idea is, I give you money up front, you're successful, you make a killing, we get richer. Angels, people who have a little bit of money and want to, try to get their hands in the game, or their own money. And the thing about all these startups, these thousands of startups, they're almost all going to fail. Almost every single one is going to fail. And that's okay. That's totally fine. One of the first things that you learn in the startup world is that failure is part of the game, and you should accept it and embrace it. But in the cases where you don't fail, I'm sure you guys know Waze, bought by Google. You have the Gift Project, bought by eBay. Onovo, bought by eBay. Wix, we just went public. It's a $1 billion company now, which is insane. There are so many success stories, and the companies that are successful change industries. Even the ones that aren't successful change industries. But the funny thing about this is you have all of this money and all of these people, and you come to this key realization that an entrepreneur is not born. Occasionally you'll run across somebody who says, I was born an entrepreneur. They're usually full of shit. You know, they have to get there somehow. And if you have an idea, and I'm sure, you know, if you're in this class, a lot of you have ideas. It doesn't mean you can run a business. It doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur. Usually they have nothing to do with each other. In fact, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who don't have ideas and look around for people with ideas, right? Well, what's funny about this is helping startups succeed when you have $3 billion just in Tel Aviv. And we're not even talking about Silicon Valley, which has so much more. There's an entire business built around helping startups succeed. And if you imagine yourselves all as startups and everybody is kind of an entrepreneur, I'm hoping that this is going to be a little interesting, that you're going to see things within the processes that, you know, the startup community has built up that you might be able to apply to the businesses that you want to join, the businesses that you want to start. The most popular one today, the most popular methodology today is what we call a lean startup. The idea is that you build something, you learn, you measure, you build again, and you pivot if you have to. And I'm going to talk about what all of these different pieces are. And I think they're all directly applicable to what you all are doing here. So the kind of core tenet of this idea behind a lean startup is this, that success is engineered by following process. It can be learned, it can be taught, which basically goes along with this idea that entrepreneurs don't exist. You don't come out of the womb being able to be an entrepreneur. You have to learn, you have to kind of figure out how to actually do these things. And I'm sure all of you, if you were to raise your hand, no one in here knows how to run a business. Maybe you have some ideas, but the startup kids who are all in these cafes who are going for money are in the exact same position. One of the first things you realize when looking at this idea of a lean startup is this approach of smarter, not harder, okay? Can I build it? Doesn't matter. If you can build it, that's great. It's nice that you can build something. If you have this amazing idea and you can do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should build it. You might have an idea that you find incredibly interesting just to you, or just to your small group of friends. And it's with materials, it's with a new school of thought in design, it's with something really groundbreaking and revolutionary for you. But that doesn't mean you should build it. That doesn't mean you should turn your life into that business. The key thing that you start, even before you decide that you're going to go to investors or even start prototyping, is, can I build a business around it? Is this something that I can take from idea, release it to the market, and actually thrive from this, be successful with this? There's no concept of, there was this famous movie when I was growing up in the States in the 80s, Field of Dreams. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but there's this quote, if you build it, they will come. Not true. If you build it, most people are going to say, I don't care, and go on to something else. So the first question you ask yourself is, can I build this thing? Should I build it? And then, can I build a business? If you can build a business, you can move on to the next piece. And one of the core tenets of the lean methodology, and this is actually going across all different products, this isn't just technology anymore, is this idea that you want to build an MVP. An MVP stands for the minimum viable product. What it basically means is, when I release this product, does it need to do everything? You know, you think about the Swiss Army knife, right? The Swiss Army knife does everything. It's a screwdriver, it's a corkscrew, it's a scissors, it's all of these things. It's also a knife. If your path to market is just to release the knife and then add on features, great, but your minimum viable product isn't the fully baked piece. Your minimum viable product is the smallest thing you can release to the market that will give some amount of success. And the measurement of success is interesting. In terms of success, do people see it? Do you get notoriety? Are people interested? Does it sell? These are all different ways to measure success. And the key thing about the MVP that you start with is it shouldn't be built in isolation. Go ask everybody. Go talk to everybody. Run it by people. There's this idea that you have people who work, on their own somewhere, in a basement, in a coffee shop, and they change the world. It doesn't really happen. You have to stay in touch with markets, with people, and start taking your ideas and throwing them around and seeing what sticks. So when we talk about an MVP, let's talk about something more applicable than this Swiss Army knife example. You have Instagram. And I'm sure a lot of you use Instagram, know Instagram. When you look at Instagram, it does a lot of things. You take a photo, you apply filters, you can share. There's an Android app. It's on. You can share across all these different social networks. But when it first came out, this was 2008, 2009. When this application first came out, it did three things: take a photo, apply a filter to the photo, and share it. That's it. That's all it did. It didn't have tagging. It didn't have comments. It didn't have a website. It didn't have any of these things. When they looked at what they could actually throw out to the market and have stick, it was just this tiny amount. And that's the core of an MVP, is the smallest piece that you can actually send out to the public. Another core tenet of this idea of a lean startup is that it's all science. You want to be able to eliminate uncertainty. There's this famous quote that there's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. That means is there's the your face there is priceless. So there's the things you know, right? There are the things you don't know, and then there are all the surprises along the way. And part of this lean methodology is taking the pieces that you are in control of. You can't control the market. You can't control the whims of the consumer. You can't control if something is going to be interesting. You can't control if the stock market crashes and no one has money anymore. You can't control any of these things. But there are pieces that you can control. And that's part of this lean startup approach, is that you take all of the factors that are in your control, and we're going to talk about this later with your brand. We're going to kind of take these things that you actually can do, that you can kind of fight this idea of not controlling. And then the other piece is that this product development here is a science. Every little thing is measurable, and every little piece is controllable. And when we talk about building and measuring and learning, the way, if we go back to our Instagram example, or if we go to anything else, you have an idea, you release the core of it, and then you add something. You add something really tiny, just something really, really, really small. Could be a new button. Let's say we have a new e-commerce application, and our e-commerce application is a revolutionary way to sell things on the internet. And it has a button, and the button is red. And someone else in this company says, no, I don't think the button should be red, I think the button should be blue. And what will happen? They'll release both versions, one red, one blue, and if there's even a slight lean, one direction or the other, 3% more of our customers buy when the button is red, that button is red. It will forever be red. There's this idea of constant feedback. You throw something out, you see how it feels. You release it to a couple customers, you see if they like it. If they don't, you throw it out and you do something else. It's this constant measured approach of trying to figure out if what you're doing is right. And you always check your assumptions. You always check to make sure that the direction you're moving is the right one. And this goes back to not building in isolation. If you build in isolation, you start really drinking your own Kool-Aid. You start really thinking that what you're doing is totally right without seeing anything from other people. And you could be completely off base with the product you're building. So you always measure, you always check. And it's funny, when I worked at Adobe, we had 3-year release cycles. That meant that we thought of an idea, 3 years later it was actually out to market. With Wix, which is a completely different model, Wix works much more like a lean startup. We release a new feature every day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and if the features work, we go with them. If the features don't, they get thrown out and people do something else. If we go back to our Instagram example, so let's say our MVP worked and everyone loves it and they're using it. So now, do we need a website? Check to see if people want a website. Ask your customers, talk to your users, look around at the competition. Does it have to work on Android? If you remember, Instagram only worked on iPhone at first. That was it. And iPhone had a very small percentage of the market. Granted, it's that cool market. It's the hip market, right? Which filters work? Let's add more filters. Let's add more to this product. Do we need tagging? Do we need comments? Do we need to share on Facebook or Twitter? All of these things they rolled out slowly, and they checked to see what stuck, and they moved on from it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you believe in what you do, you love your product, and let's say Instagram was a giant failure. You have to be honest with yourself about Why? Why is this not working? And there's this concept called the 5 whys. Which is basically, if you're going to ask why, ask 5 times. And the idea here is that by the time if you get to the 5th why, you will know exactly why something didn't work. My car ran out of gas. Or my car stopped. Why? It's out of gas. Why? I didn't fill up. Why? I didn't see the indicator light. Why? It's too small. Okay, the indicator light needs to be bigger, or it needs to make a sound. We've gone from the problem to the symptom, and we know why. And in some cases, your end result, your end why could be no one cares, no one likes your product, no one likes what you're doing, and that's fine. And this is where, at the end of the day, if you're facing failure, you pivot. And to pivot means you change direction, you change your product, you change your customers, you change something about your doing, or you just fail. You just say, whatever, this was a great attempt, it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. And you move on. And as you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, okay, some of this is applicable, some of it isn't, but it doesn't seem like this gives room for invention, room for creativity. And that's one of the key complaints about this methodology is, could you imagine that this would happen? The iPhone? It started in 2003. In 2003, phones were bricks. They were candy bars. They didn't do anything, right? Some of them had cameras, some of them didn't. It was this magical time where a phone actually worked, right? It answered, it sent text messages. That was about it. Some people had played around with touchscreens, but no one really had. And Apple basically said, you know what, this is wrong. The way we interact with technology is wrong, and I think in 4 or 5 years, it's going to be completely different. And in 2007, they released the iPhone, and basically the world changed. And that's what we're going to start talking about now. But you really have to ask yourself, if Apple had subscribed to this lean startup methodology, would the iPhone exist? Probably not. Lean startups let you build a business quickly, and they let you figure out if you're spending money and time in the right way, but they don't necessarily allow for the big ideas. And with everything, there's a balance. There are a lot of people who hate the lean startup. It happens to be the most popular right now, but things change. And when you look to apply some of these to what you're doing, this idea of building in isolation, this idea of keep looping around your idea and iterating on it is good, that can apply to everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about the iPhone, but in kind of an indirect manner. I want to talk about failure and Flash. So I want to talk about the death of Flash and the rise of mobile, and it's continuing to rise. So you remember Flash? We had over 1 billion installs of this application. And to put this into perspective, there's about 6.5, 7 million people on Earth. So you could say that 1 in 6 people on Earth had the Flash player installed. But that's not true, because not everyone has a computer. So basically, of the people that had computers, every single person had the Flash player. And not just computers, but mobile phones. You saw it on TVs. You saw it everywhere. Flash was everywhere. Love it or hate it, Flash was everything. And you saw it everywhere. Games, right? Advertisements, videos, YouTube. Pornography was giant, was one of our biggest businesses. Beautiful websites that were very interesting. And also the skip intro sites, the people who abused Flash. But with any technology, anything, you use it, you abuse it, for good or bad. And quickly, porn is actually not a laughing matter here. There's actually a theory in technology adoption that pornography has been the single largest driver of technology, more than anything else on Earth. The printing press, yeah, they printed the Bible, but they started printing pornography not long after. The VCR, the reason the VCR got so popular is so you could rent pornography. You could send it, right? Digital cameras, porn. E-commerce, faster bandwidth, internet. And there's this kind of joke in some technology circles that as long as the porn industry is using your technology, you're fine. You're never going to fail, right? You're going to be okay. And it's really funny because part of software is testing code. And so when we worked at Adobe, there were a couple guys who had to sign an agreement that no matter what the content they saw, they weren't going to quit. And it was in a locked room somewhere else, and these are the guys who had to fix the bugs that the people in porn found. And so they'd send a video and they'd say, at minute 7, it doesn't work. And so the people would have to go through minute 7, and but it's one of the dirty secrets of technology, that pornography really drives it. And then it all changed for us. The second Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, from Adobe's perspective, and we knew it then. We knew it the second it came out that we were in trouble. We didn't have a Flash player that would run on mobile. And at that time, no one had a smartphone. Hardly anybody used a smartphone. I remember I was one of the tech nerds who lined up to get an iPhone, to get the very first one. I had the first one. Everyone looked at it like, oh my God, what is this? This thing is amazing, right? And today it's like, whatever, it's an iPhone. But even then, at Adobe, we knew that we were screwed. If we didn't pivot, if we didn't do something, we were in trouble. And as we all know what happened, Flash died. Steve Jobs eventually said that Flash had no place on the iPhone. And that was it. All of these billions of installs, pornography, games, advertisements, everything, done. Nothing. There's nothing left. Basically, the entire concept of how we consume content changed. It used to be you had a computer. You had maybe a laptop, and maybe you had Wi-Fi, and you'd consume content that way. But you had a web browser, and you had email, and that was it. All of a sudden, we didn't consume content the same way. There were applications. There was mobile. You started to be on your phone more, and we're going to talk about this. But Apple basically killed it, and everything changed. The product team that I was on, we were all told very nicely, your product is now going to be engineered in India. You still have a job with us, but it's going to be something different. And Adobe pivoted. Adobe took an entire business unit and decided that it wasn't relevant anymore. And sometimes you have to. And this was huge. This was 1 billion people, at least, using this software. Dead. In 2 years? 3 years? Nothing, right? And so, Flash pivoted. Flash is for gaming now. You'll still see online games that use Flash. And the Creative Suite, which is Adobe's big source of revenue, Illustrator, Photoshop, etc. There's now new tools to help author content that looks like Flash, but isn't Flash, that actually runs on the iPhone. YouTube doesn't use Flash anymore. Most porn sites have moved away from Flash. Flash is going to be a footnote in history as something that... No, so if I'm trying to keep this not very technical. Basically what happened is web browsers, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, they all got better. And they took the functionality that you had within Flash and moved it into the browser. And from the end user's perspective, you don't care. You want to watch a video. You don't care if it's Flash, you don't care if it's inside the browser, but for the nerds that work in my industry, we care. This is something that was... Shalom. Yeah. Does this happen all the time? Is this like is this a common thing? Yeah. That's cute.
It's always a surprise.
Yeah. But this is good. It gives me a chance to take a drink. Okay. So basically, I'm gonna pick back up. That was a cute interruption. So basically, Adobe had to pivot, and it pivoted because all of a sudden, the way we consume content and the way we deal with things just changed literally overnight. You can mark that exact moment in history and see that it changed. It's one of these watershed moments. And so now, mobile is huge. Okay, mobile is huge, and it's only getting bigger. And I don't think any of us realize how big mobile is at this point. There's this amazing word in English, ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means that it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. Radios, TVs, in some places cars, electricity. Ubiquitous pieces of technology that everybody has. And mobile is becoming one of these ubiquitous pieces of technology. So this is a graph. I hope everyone can see it. It's a little confusing, but basically, the important piece of information is that in about 3 years, 4 years, there's going to be one smartphone for every person over 13 in the United States. Right now, it's at about, so if we're going to look at this, we're somewhere in here, okay? So we're at about 150, 160 million smartphones just in the US. The US population is only about 250, 270. Thank you. And we're getting to the point where nearly everybody has one, right? And there's this really fun, part of what I studied in university was actually technology and how technology adopts and how technology changes through societies. And there's this really fun part of technology adoption called the diffusion of innovation. And this you see everywhere, over every single aspect of technology, over art, over really every aspect of society. It's a bell curve, but the idea is that you have different groups of people using technology. You have your innovators. They're the first people who have one, right? They have it before anyone else has heard about it, and as soon as people are interested in it and use it, they go on to something else. You have your early adopters, the guys who, kind of take on something before most other people, and they're a slightly larger group. You have the early majority, might be you guys, you might be the early adopters, some of you might be, the last pieces. But the early majority are, the general population that is open to new technologies, open to new things, open to new ideas, and they take them on and they use them. The late majority you can think of as your parents. Your parents might have been one of the last ones to have Facebook or to have, an iPhone or to have a TV in my family's case. And then you have the laggards. Laggard is just a cute word that says, the really slow ones. And a laggard in this case, your grandparents. They're the last people on earth to start using technology. And in this case, where we are with smartphones, if we look at this curve, okay, there's this idea of the tipping point. I don't know if any of you, I think it's part of the course material, right? This idea that the tipping point. Once a market reaches a certain amount of saturation, there's no turning back. Right? Well, there is turning back. Look at Flash. But really, in theory, there's no turning back. And where we are with mobile, we're about here. So basically, the people who are going to have smartphones have one already. And it's to the point where everyone needs to have one. Your parents have them. My grandmother has an iPhone, and she's almost 90, right? Everybody has it. It's so awesome. I don't know if your grandparents are the same way, but my grandmother, when she writes text messages, they're like full letters. Like, dear David, blah, 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 love grandma. Like, it's very cute. They might use the technology, but they might not internalize how to actually use it, right? So this is where we are with mobile. We're at the tipping point where all of a sudden, everyone is going to have an iPhone. Everyone's going to have a smartphone. It doesn't matter which one. It just matters that they have one. And we look at web usage. And this, for your businesses, this is incredibly important. This is one of the most important things I'm going to show you this entire lecture. So if we look at June 2012, July 2013, the blue number here is the percentage of page views, of people actually viewing the internet on their phones. Right now in North America in 2013, it's 15%. I tried to find the new version of this, but it's around 27 at this point. Okay? So it's nearly a quarter of mobile web traffic in the US. It's huge. Asia. China is one of the single largest markets on earth right now. Funny statistic, China buys more luxury goods than anyone else on earth. And at this point, they're 26%. They're actually larger. They're about 35 or 40. Worldwide, almost 20% of the web is accessed through mobile phones. And you think about it, this is a cute cartoon. If anyone knows XKCD, it's kind of a fun read. But here's your morning routine, right? You wake up, you grab your phone, you go to Facebook, you check the news, right? You don't go and grab your laptop. You don't go and sit in front of a computer, right? You read the news, you put your phone down, you get up, right? Laptops are getting weird, you use them for work, but when you consume content, you don't necessarily use them, right? Things are shifting. And social here is even bigger. So this is the percentage of users on these different services who are only interacting through mobile.
But again, you have people that watch TV in the laptop instead of the television.
Oh, sure, you do.
The laptop used for other stuff
Absolutely. The laptop is turning into the TV in a way. It's turning into your entertainment console. But at the same time, in Japan, you'll see people on their phone watching TV. It's a question of data, right? We don't have data that's fast enough. You know, Cellcom is going to hate everybody if they all start streaming, you know, like last night's Game of Thrones on their cell phone. It's just the infrastructure isn't quite there yet. But so when we talk about social, okay, 76% of Twitter users only interact on the mobile application, only interact on their cell phone, okay? For Facebook, it's even more dramatic. In the UK, 83% of Facebook's traffic is from mobile. The US, it's 78%. When you think about social, social at this point is almost all mobile. Everyone is using their phones to access this content. Everyone is consuming data differently. And this is where we get into, you know, trying to bridge all of these different pieces, the startup, mobile, and now you. One of the first things I talked about with the lean startup is this idea that you want to control the things that you can control. And as you think about yourself as a brand, the very first thing you can control is your presence, is your web presence, is how people find you, is how people discover you. Think about it. For a brand, brands have websites, right? In the past, brands, you know, in the late 90s, they might have had something on AOL, and they had a website, right? The really forward-thinking brands had websites from the beginning, right? Now they have social media. Every brand has a presence on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google+, on Pinterest, if you're in Russia, on VK, on all of these different pieces of technology. They're everywhere. And when you think about it, your parents have websites. My parents run a business, we have a website. My uncle has a website. All of these people have websites. If you're a business at this point, you're expected to have a website. It's just something you do. And your grandmother, if like my grandmother, is on Facebook. They consume the same kind of content. Basically, everybody is on these services, right? And the engagement is crazy, right? When we talk about how do we engage, at this point, it's the mobile web, it's applications on your mobile phone, and then it's desktop sites. And what I mean by desktop is your computer, right? Your actual physical, your laptop, something with a big screen, something that you sit at, something you put on your lap, right? Not so much an iPad, but you know, something big, right? Something that I sit on in an office all day. To give you an idea, here's the cropped version of Louis Vuitton's Instagram page, okay? Louis Vuitton has 1.6 million followers, okay? That's insane. 1.6 million people like Louis Vuitton on Instagram, and what does this mean for Louis Vuitton? This means that they have 1.6 captive eyeballs. They have 1.6 million people, and it's not going to be that high. You know, the numbers are always a little inflated. But think about it. They have a new collection. They're thinking about a new collection. They have a new fabric. They have something, right? They have Kanye West, you know, at some gala wearing, you know, something from them, right? They put it on Instagram. It's quick. It's easy. People comment. People share. We talk about things that go viral. It's something like this. It's something super easy, right? Let's look at Twitter. Here's Herman Miller. I actually grew up 30 minutes from Herman Miller's headquarters. They have 335,000 followers on Twitter. They're a furniture company, right? They have great design. They're really, really cool, but it's furniture. 335,000 people care enough to see what Herman Miller tweets. I only read a little bit of it, but it's not very interesting. I mean, but this is a ton of engagement, right? They're thinking about the brand. You're on your phone, you're on the bus, you're going through, and oh, Herman Miller, and you see it, and you engage. You think about it for that split second. And sometimes that split second is actually all you need, okay? So here's Twitter. Here's Leica. Leica Don and I were actually just talking about this. It's like I read your mind before I put this presentation together. So Leica just happened to come out with a new camera, but Leica, a boutique camera manufacturer, they make, in my opinion, the best cameras on earth. 300,000 likes on Facebook. And what does a like on Facebook mean? It means that whenever they post something, their users are going to see it. It's 300,000 people. How many of them are customers? Not a lot. How many of them are aspirational customers? Probably quite a few. But they still get the idea out and people are still thinking Leica. They think about it, right? And as you're consuming, it's part of the consumption curve. If we just look at Leica's site, okay? Leica's site gets about 400,000, 500,000 visitors a month. So when you take the visitors to their site, plus the engagement on their Facebook page, plus they have Instagram, obviously. They're a camera company, they should. When you look at Twitter, they're engaging with so many millions of people, and they're engaging like never before, and it's free, right? You think about product marketing in the past. What do? You pay someone money, you run an ad in a newspaper, you run an ad in a magazine, you buy a commercial. This is all free, right? You can reach 300,000 people, assuming 300,000 people actually care what you have to say, but for free. There's no cost on your end. The only cost is the human cost of doing it, right? And this is where I want to really drive home the point that I'm trying to make through all of this, is that of these controllable things, of these known knowns that you can control when you think about your business and you as an entrepreneur, your mobile presence is so incredibly important, and you control the entire thing, all of it. This is the quickest and easiest thing you can do to make your brand look amazing. But more than that, this might be your only chance to engage. And what do I mean by engage? So let's imagine that you're producing a new collection of chairs, okay? And what do? You send out an email blast. You email, you're doing your own marketing, you're trying to drive business yourself. What do? You email, right? You send your site and your information to everyone, okay? People in New York, in Berlin, in London, in places where people are going to want to buy your product. You send to store owners. You send everywhere, right? And so now imagine, someone runs a gallery in New York. They get up in the morning, they live in Brooklyn, the gallery's in Manhattan. They wake up, they check the news, they check to see what's going on, they check Facebook. They shower, they eat something, they walk outside, they get on the subway. No one has a car in Brooklyn. No one has a car who's actually working in Manhattan. Same with London, same with Paris, same with any of these big cities, right? And what do? They're on the subway. What does everybody do on the subway? Imagine, you're abroad somewhere, or even on the bus today. Every single person who's on that bus is on their cell phone. And I do the same thing. Like the times when I take the bus to work instead of biking, I'm on my phone, I'm checking email. I'm checking to see what's going on. So imagine this gallery owner is on the subway, and she's on her phone, right? And she sees your email, and she checks it and says, oh, okay, great, I should look at this. Clicks on your site, and your site doesn't work on mobile. What's she going to do? She's going to delete that email. She's not going to think about you again. You're done. That chance to be featured in a gallery, that chance for her to forward that information to someone else, gone. And it's even worse on Facebook, okay? So imagine if 80% of the people in the US are on Facebook. Let's say you release a new website, and what do? You post it on Facebook, and you tell all of your friends, guys, please, this is very important to me, please share my page, right? You share it with all these people. 80% of the people who are viewing this are on an iPhone. They're on a cell phone, right? And what happens? They go, they look at it, it doesn't work on a smartphone, and they bounce. And this is the bounce rate. The bounce rate will kill you. The bounce rate is this idea how often someone only sees one page of your site and how long they stay. On mobile, the bounce rate is incredibly high. It's double, triple what it is on an actual standard website. And the bounce rate on websites is pretty high too. Something like 25% of people bounce right away. They go to the site, they say, I'm not interested, they're gone. You might never have them back. Your chance of engagement completely disappears, right? And when you're trying to start a business, when you're trying to actually get yourself off the ground, if you ruin that chance, that could be the difference between being successful and not. And I want to show a couple examples, because we talk about mobile, and we talk about how important mobile is, and how part of this presence of yours is your mobile website, is your branding information on these social networks, and your desktop site. But I want to talk about what this actually means. I'm sure all of you in your head have an idea of a site that doesn't work on mobile. But I really want to call this out, and that's why we had to delay all of this. So this guy, Tukajin Yoshioka, I can't pronounce his name. He's an amazing designer. If you're not familiar, Google him afterwards. He does beautiful, amazing things, both in art and in product, okay? He's famous. He's incredibly famous. He's incredibly well-known. Showed at the Louvre. He does all of these product partnerships. He's shown all over the world. He's huge, okay? He is in the position that anyone who's trying to build a business or build a brand would kill to be in at the end of the day, would kill to be there, right? But funny thing about his site, actually. So here's his site. Can everyone see this okay? Yeah. So that's useful. It's in Japanese. So here's the site. It's very pretty. It moves, design, art, product. If we look at product, it has this very nice refresh. Right? It's a little slow, but it's amazing we have network at all right now.
It's being greeted by camels.
Yeah. But so this is gorgeous, right? Here's something he did for Cartel. Here's, other projects, right? A lot with Cartel, actually. But you can see it's really nice, okay? Now let's say this person is just starting out. They don't have a brand. They don't have anything. And the cute thing about Chrome is you can make Chrome pretend to be a mobile browser. So we can pretend that it's an iPhone. That's what you get. This is what it looks like on Chrome. This is what it looks like on your iPhone. Oh, absolutely. Once this is over, I will totally show you guys all of that. But so imagine our gallery owner example, right? This guy, amazing. He's brilliant. He does beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things. What do? You're on the subway, you see this? Sorry, you kill it. You're not going to go back to this. The odds, if you're a gallery owner, if you're a business, if you're anything, you are so inundated. You have so many emails of people who are trying to be featured, right? Who are trying to be shown. This kills you, right? And for him, it doesn't matter. He's famous, right? Who cares if his site doesn't work? I want to show you a couple of good examples. Aqua Creations, they're Israeli. They do beautiful light fixtures, really, really, really gorgeous stuff. They're featured all throughout the world. And the funny thing about Israel, you might not know this, is Israel is a very small market. This might be a bit of a shock. But they're a very small market. So when you think about getting your brand out there, it's your web presence, right? Because Israel is too small to sustain most of what I imagine you guys want to do. It's too small, right? But in a lot of cases, the US is too small. You have to kind of think globally, right? And your best way to think globally is a website. And here's their site. It's nice, right? I don't love it from design-wise, but it works. And if we look at it, they actually do a very nice job, right? If I click on lighting here, they go through and you see your products. So you can imagine this gallery owner sitting on the subway again, paging through, paging through, paging through. Okay, this is nice. I'm going to start this email. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to go back to the office, and I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the full site, right? And I'm going to go to lighting, and I'm going to get collections. The navigation on this is actually, if there's any UX people in here, this is bad UX. Yes. I do mean responsive design. I'm trying not to be too technical, but yes. Responsive design is this idea that a site works regardless of the screen size. As you expand or contract, the site kind of changes. And the last example I'm going to do, and Ira, I'm so sorry. I'm actually going to do Ira's site. So Ira, in case you don't know, creates beautiful light fixtures, beautiful light sculptures. They're gorgeous. Okay, so here's her site. There's interesting bits here to share, to pin. So when you think about social networks, you can make sure that people can easily do this. You scroll down, you get more information. If you look at it on mobile, same thing. It works. You have the same slider. You have the information. If our gallery owner is looking at this, all the information that she has here, easily accessible. Right? These are the pieces that you have to think about. Right? These are, when I talk about sites that work and sites that don't, a site that works, and then our Japanese friend, did I close him? Oh, he's here. And then our Japanese friend. Right? And so imagine, if you're really interested in seeing this, what do? You start scrolling. You start trying to find where is the content. And I scroll, oh, it's here. But what is this, right? If I Can I even scroll? Sort of. Yeah, on the phone you can scroll, right? Okay, that looks really cool. I don't know what it is, but it looks nice, right? Put yourself in the mindset of these people as you're trying to get your brand out there. And yes, that's gorgeous and that's amazing, but they wouldn't see that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how brilliant your product is. If no one sees it, no one cares. So let's kill all of this and go back to our presentation from current slide. So we had Aqua Creations, we had Era, and now we're going to talk about, so we talked about the why. And I'm hoping I did a good job of convincing you that mobile is important. Mobile is important. It's only going to get more important, especially as it's a piece that you can control. All of you are the masters of your destiny here in terms of what people see when they find your brand. You can't control if people are interested. You can't control the market. You can't control if Putin is going to invade Ukraine. You can't control any of these things, right? But you can control how people discover you and how people see you and how people talk about you. Talking less, but you can at least get the conversation started. So what do you need to do? You need to register everything. Everything, everything, everything. Open a social account everywhere you can. There's a difference here, though, between your social account and your brand. Yes, you are a brand, but don't use your personal Facebook account as your product announcement page. Keep them very, very, very separate. And actually, if you're going to be a brand and you're going to keep your Facebook page linked somehow, sanitize your Facebook page. Drinking photos, bikini photos, whatever, kill them all. Make them only available to your friends. The last thing you want a gallery owner to see is you getting drunk on a Saturday night. You don't want that. A Twitter account. Twitter for your brand. Even if you have nothing to say, send links. Instagram. You're going to make something. Take pictures of the process. Talk about things that inspire you. Do something. Google+, even though no one really uses it, Google does. And it's important. Facebook, obviously. Buy your domain, right? You need, eradesignlab.com, right? And she also has her name. I even have my name. You need to have these properties and create a site. Not just any site, a responsive site. Not even a Wix site. But so, again, like Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Instagram, all of these things, and link them all together. They all need to be linked together. Tweet something that you put out on Instagram. Tweet something you put on Facebook. Have a Facebook link to your Twitter profile. But as your brand, and all of these things come together. When we talk about your domain, it's www.mydomainhere.com.biz. Not COIL, that says where you're from, that says where you are. Com. Com doesn't mean anything to anybody anywhere. It just means commercial, right? And your name as well. If you're going to become a brand, you are also the main driver behind this brand. Steve Jobs had stevejobs.com, right? Our Japanese friend has his name. Johnny Ive from Apple has his name as a domain. These are all things that you have to have. If someone else buys it and someone looks for you by name and they can't find you, you're done, right? And a site. I know this sounds complicated, and I can tell the girl in the back knows a little bit about web design. But there are a lot of free site creation tools. Do we have any graphic designers in here? Hey, a lot of people. Do we have UX designers? Okay. Listen, I can tell from years of experience, graphic designers, you're not UX designers. You're not. You might be able to produce amazing copy or amazing, beautifully designed things. Chances are, you're not going to think about how it works on the web, and it's not going to work well. Like, really, I'm saying this in the nicest possible way, and we see this all the time at Wix. At Wix, we have a group of about 60 designers that design sites for us, right? And we have a bunch of UX people that kind of make sure that they don't design something that we can't produce on the internet. And just because you can design something beautifully graphically does not mean you can do UX. But if you are a designer, if you are a graphic designer and you want to build something yourself, learn a lot about UX. And if you really want to learn about tools or technologies, if anyone's interested, please come talk to me later. The technology side is something I like. There are a lot of free tools. Weebly, Squarespace, Moonfruit, Wix. There are all these tools that will let you create a site for free. And a web presence that is just a picture and the name of the brand is better than nothing at all, is so much better than nothing at all. I hate to do this. I'm going to shamelessly plug Wix. You know, I work there. I'm a little biased. The nice thing about Wix is for designers, by designers. We have a ton of designers there, and we really think about the experience of everything. You don't need to code. It's free. It's pretty. Tons of templates that make it look like a nicely designed site. But all of the other companies that I talked about here, they all have the same thing. These tools, but Wix, you know, there are these tools that you can use, and you should take advantage. So overall, you are a brand, and a brand is a startup, and a startup is filled with entrepreneurs. And you can run it backwards. You're all entrepreneurs. You're all going to try to do a startup, and you are all a brand. Every single one of you that wants to start their own business or wants to start their own product, you are all brands. You are all entrepreneurs. And there's a lot you can learn from other industries. You know, if there's $3 billion into startups right now, $3 billion, some of them are going to succeed. We're not just going to throw money at the wall and say, oh, you know, good luck. Take advantage of these industries that have so much money and have put so much thought into building businesses and building something from nothing, because you are building something from nothing. And control the known factors. Control the things you can control. I cannot tell you how important this is. Control your social presence. Control your website. Control how people consume your content. Control the discussion. You can't control anything else, but you can control this piece. And mobile, everything. There's this idea now, it's called mobile first. And I think for the graphics people, this will probably resonate. This idea that you design for mobile first. After you have an amazing experience on mobile, design for the full screen experience web. But mobile is a juggernaut. In 5 years and 6 years, mobile is going to take about 80% of content. Right now, it's about to tip. We're actually at the tipping point where there are now more smartphones than there are computers. Shipped last year, there are more iPhones, more Nexus phones, more Android phones than laptops. Think about this, right? And that gap is only going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And it will get to the point where the only time people use laptops is to use Photoshop, is to play a game, is to, in my line of work, write code that other people consume. That's going to be it. We're going to consume everything through iPhones, through smartphones, and then it's going to shift again. Google Glass has started to get popular. I don't know if you've seen this. There's this cute term, glass holes. Basically, the people who wear Google Glass, it's a heads-up display. It's like a computer that broadcasts in front of you. It's from Google, and it's a wearable computer. Maybe that's the next thing, but it's going to be something else. But the important thing is that technology changes, and when you can control these changes and you can harness them in your benefit, you have to. So that's it. I want to open it up for questions. I figure I'm probably a slightly different talk than you guys are used to getting. But I'd love to open this up for questions, really anything, if anyone has anything at all. Or if there's something very technical and you don't want to ask it in front of all these people and bore everybody, do not hesitate to come talk to me afterwards.